Today at TFPMini, we're going to be making the Walt Disney World Courtesy Tram, so I'm going to call for no further boarding at this time. Unless you're one of those tram groupies, this probably doesn't sound super exciting, but hang in there and let me explain. In our last episode, we made Epcot's Mexico food booth. I was using Fusion 360 to model it, which wasn't all that easy. Sure, I barely know how to use Fusion 360, but the bigger issue is just how precise Fusion wants to be when I'm modeling things that don't have precision. So Fusion doesn't love freeballing it. So the search for new modeling software was on. I'll skip the boring journey this took me on, but in the end I landed on a program called Plasticity. Since you asked, I chose Plasticity because it doesn't have a subscription fee, which is a requirement for any new software I use now. No more giving in to greedy subscription companies. It's very reasonably priced, it's easy to use and learn, and it has CAD level accuracy because sometimes you do need accuracy. Now, the only downside is that Plasticity isn't a full-on parametric modeler like Fusion, where you can go back and adjust a measurement on a sketch and have the entire model update. But the more I use it, the less I care about that sweet history feature in Fusion. Okay, so we're making a tram engine, a tram car, tram driver vehicle, tram puller car? I don't know if it has a name, but I'm making a tram driver puller engine vehicle. Seemed like a good place to start since it's small but has a lot of details and isn't just a box like a building. I'm not a 3D modeler, so I watched a few beginner tutorials on Plasticity basics and then just jumped in. So here's the basic way I'm working. I take a reference photo of the tram. I load that into Plasticity. I draw curves on that image. I extrude those 2D curves into 3D shapes, and then I rinse and repeat many times. If you've never done any modeling like this before, it looks like a lot to learn. And it is, but also isn't. You just have to break everything down into small steps. So I'll start with this main body section first. I traced some simple shapes and extruded them. It takes seconds to do this. Then I move on to some details like this. I don't know, engine hatch or something. Part of my learning curve is not just modeling, but modeling for 3D printing and painting. So I need to consider how small a detail will be at HO scale. I also need to think about how a part will print and avoid as many printing supports as possible, because printing supports are the worst. And I need to think about how a part will get painted and possibly model in some relief cuts so I can paint straight lines later on. But most modeling is often nothing more than drawing shapes and extruding them into 3D. Pretty soon you'll start looking at the world in a whole new way and you'll see how everything can be broken down into simple shapes you can model. And the more you model, the easier this all gets. Here, I was making some vent details, and I spent way too long drawing a vent cutout, then duplicating it and trying to line them all up. Later, I found the pattern tool, which makes it easy to take any item and pattern it out for you. So embrace the struggle that is learning 3D modeling, because it only gets easier with time. You can probably tell from some of these clips that I'm only making half of a tram. The beauty of 3D modeling is that you only need to model things that are unique. This tram is symmetrical, so you only need to model one side and then you mirror the other side and suddenly have two sides. Back to those tiny details though, something like brake lights can become impossibly small, and this is almost too small to paint. So I have to balance duplicating the real life item while also being okay with it not being a 100% carbon copy of the real tram. Since I'm new to modeling and this software, I spent a lot of time doing things over and over again, like this engine cover which has slots in it that took me a few tries to figure out the best way to make them. But if I had to do it again, I can make it in 1/4 the time or less. This logo is a great example of a detail I want to have but need to compromise on. There is no way the printer is going to print these tiny letters that spell out transport very well, and even if it could, they're just too small to paint. So I'll take creative freedom as needed in cases like this, and it still looks great. As I model, I do an occasional test print to make sure I'm on track. Looks like a thing. Then I just need to finalize the driver's cab and print a final test model, and it's off to paint for some primer and some color. I'm new to airbrushing, but I realize I need to use the airbrush as much as possible for nice paint jobs compared to my brushing skills. Now I'm mixing up a dark gray color which I will use for the bottom stripe on the tram as well as the rims. Holding little parts is no good, so I'm going to use some blue tack to hold them on a popsicle stick. Much better. The bottom of the tram is dark gray, so I need to paint that, but painting a straight line is no easy task. But this is why I modeled a line indent in the side of the model. It gives me a good line to follow when painting. I still have some tweaking to do on the system, but building paint lines into models does seem to work. Running an X-Acto blade across them helps too. That engine cover gets the same gray paint as the rims and the stripe at the bottom. The brake lights need some paint too. Controlled breathing is key. And the side lights and top light need some orange. Now that the rims are dry, the tires get some black. Can't really tell the difference between my dark gray rims and black wheels. Oh well, live and learn. I had a metallic gunmetal color, so I figured I would use that for the windows. Makes them look like tinted windows with a sort of reflective look to them. Time to paint that white line. Those modeled in grooves are proving their worth now. Too bad I set the tram down in some wet silver paint earlier, but I'll fix that later. Now, you didn't think I was going to forget about the passenger car, did you? I began modeling on the passenger car in the same way, but this one isn't solid. The interior is open, so it all has to be modeled. Not a big deal to model, but printing it becomes a challenge. I did a sample print, and we have some issues. I was hoping to just print the bottom half as one piece without supports, but it's a mess, and one of the doors didn't print at all. So I need to print the doors separately, which means I have to model in various pegs and holes so things can be lined up and glued together later. Another test print later, and we're in good shape, so I did a full print of all parts. First I prime, and then, once dry, I tape off the sides so I can spray the interior in a darker gray with the airbrush since brushing would be tough. I hand painted the outside of the tram using a custom mixture of white, beige, and gray for what I can only assume is a perfect match to the real thing. All the doors got painted too. Using silver, I painted the door handles, as well as those little holes I modeled to match the safety reflectors on the real tram. I didn't model a groove into the paint line on this car as I wanted to try just using an X-Acto blade to make a groove, and that actually worked perfectly. Maybe even better than my modeled grooves on the driver car. I'm using CA glue to hold the wheels on. Now, in my last video I mentioned CA not working on PLA for me, but I bought some new CA and it's great. So my apologies to the internet for calling it a liar last time on that subject. And look at me. I'm so smart, I modeled lines into the model so I know where to glue the wheels on. You'll never see my undercarriage, but I know it was fully painted. If there is a hell, and we all know there isn't, I imagine it would be filled with people doing nothing more than supergluing tiny doors onto tiny tram models like this. It's not fun, especially when those moments of panic come in as you glue your fingers together occasionally. But it worked and the result is pretty good. I did learn that I need larger tolerances when modeling peg and hole type parts that need to connect later on. Ever have one of those moments where you printed 10 right-hand doors and 0 left-hand doors? Yeah, we've all been there. I forgot to mirror those in the software. Hang on, let me grab my mirror. Ah, good, much better. Now I can finish gluing in doors to complete my hull training, and then some touch-up paint because, well, I damaged some paint. Were you wondering how I was going to connect the roof to the body? Paper clips. Modeling something that small would be too fragile, and bonus, they're metal, so I don't even have to paint them. Note to self, glue one thing at a time, not 5 things at a time. Yeah, it's a bit of a snaggletooth situation here, but it'll all work out. I assembled the roof onto the body without glue, and used mini pliers to align them into the body holes. Once in place, I had tiny drops of CA to hold it. Ooh, the final result. Oh yeah, we need a tow bar. More paper clips. Nice. And now, the final result. What, you thought I only made a blue one?